Now we are joined from Washington, D.C. by Asiaone correspondent Nick Harper. Thank you for joining us, Nick. What is the latest from Washington?
Good evening. Well, there still seems to be some confusion and contradiction here in Washington about exactly what's happening and how much engagements the United States actually has with Iran at this stage. Because what we've heard from the Trump administration over the last few days and consistently is that the US is in talks with Iran, and that the Iranians are saying that that simply has not been the case. They've been speaking, they say, to Oman and mediators as well, but they haven't been directly engaging with the US. But if you listen to the Trump administration, the president, Donald Trump, he says that those talks have been taking place. On Tuesday night, he said that there had been a all-day negotiation with Iran. He said that those discussions had been very good, and he promised on Tuesday night, Washington time, that a deal on reopening the strait was imminent, but very much making it clear that the US was taking part in that. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was asked about it on Tuesday. He's not to be quite sure about the state of play. He said, "I think there's a conversation and negotiation that we're involved in with the Iranians," whereas the Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, was very clear that those talks were taking place. So some mixed messages, again, coming from the Trump administration. And I have to admit, it's not the first time we have seen the president say that talks are taking place, only for the Iranians to contradict him, and then for Trump administration officials to double down on the fact that the talks are happening and that deals are imminent. Again, it hasn't really come to pass in the way that the US has been portraying it. We're waiting for more information out of the US today, whether there's any progress that they see from their side. But at this stage, really, that confusion continues this Wednesday about the level of engagement with the US and Iran.
That's right, Nick. Lots of mixed messages coming through. Why do you think this is the case? And is this just posturing on the side of the Iranians?
Well, I think it could certainly be a case of that, because the US president, when he was asked directly about this week, he said that from his point of view, those talks are happening and it's Iran who is saying that they are not. And he said that that follows a pattern, that the Iranians always deny that the talks are actually taking place. And you're right, that could be posturing on the Iranian side. They want to show that they're doing things without the US, that they're not beholden to actually sitting down and negotiating with the US. It shows that they are perhaps in a position of strength. But the problem is that it creates a huge amount of confusion on both sides, in Washington and Tehran, about exactly what is happening and what might take place in the coming days. Because really, from a US perspective, progress on talks is tied to the possibility of military action. When we went into the weekend, at the end of last week, the president was warning very significant strikes on Iran, the biggest yet over the weekend. And then he pulled back on that threat because he said there was progress on the diplomatic side, that talks were underway and that progress was being made. So with that confusion continuing over the state of the talks, it also bleeds into the fact that there's confusion about whether the US will continue military action against Iran at a time when it's currently on pause.
We know about these sanctions being lifted on Iranian-linked airlines. Does it signal some kind of a shift in Washington's policy?
Well, it could be, and that's something that had been discussed as part of the original memorandum of understanding and the longer-term hoped-for agreement between the US and Iran. That possibility of being able to lift sanctions really to help the financial structures in Iran, because many of the financial revenue streams that Iran had just been cut off for years because of those US sanctions. Lifting them was meant to be part of the agreement. The US would ease those sanctions, allowing Iran to continue with those revenue streams, but it wanted to see concrete results coming from Tehran, including, of course, not pursuing a nuclear program. So this might be something of a sweetener at a stage when talks and the progress of them is somewhat in limbo, that the US is showing that it's perhaps ready to engage on that level, on a sanctions level, not just on threats and trying to work out how to reopen the strait. It's also looking to the economic future of Iran as well. And perhaps that might help from a concession point of view to get things moving at a time when it's not really clear exactly whether or not a deal will stick on some of those longer term commitments that both sides are aiming for.
Nick Harper, thank you very much joining us from Washington, D.C. there.